Welcome back, everybody. In today's Jays Plays, we are going to be taking the Ampharos Bronzong deck that we covered on the channel last week, and we're going to be taking it into 5 games in the 2008 format. This was a little bit rougher of one of the Jay Plays videos that I filmed for a couple of different reasons. One, TCG1 still has a ton of bugs in the 2008 format. This created some interesting interactions, which you'll see when we get into the gameplay. And then the Gardevoir nerf, not nerf, but the Gardevoir problem where it won't let you telepass and play a support in the exact same turn, I think has pretty dramatically affected the number of Gardevoir matchups we would probably hit. And then obviously the gameplay within that matchup. Something that this deck is supposed to be very strong against Gardevoir. It kind of tilted the results a little bit as well. Other than that, I'll be up front and say there was definitely some questionable plays, a couple of misplays that I made in these games too. I'm still just getting back into the 2008 format, so the gameplay or my gameplay wasn't as smooth as I would like with it. But you'll see all of that in the video and within the games here. Deck list is exactly the same. I don't really have a whole lot to add to it. I do think there is a lot of Cessation Crystal decks in the format right now, or on the ladder right now. Cessation Crystal, Crystal Beach decks. I do think you can make an argument. The Lake Boundary has tested okay, but I do think you can make an argument just to play a much higher windstorm count, even going 3 or 4 windstorms, testing that. Same thing with like your Warp Point, your Cyclone counts. I think you can make some arguments in both those lines as well. And then of course your BBs and Celios. I think that's something you can argue and debate. But other than that, let's just go ahead, jump right on into the games, and see how we did this time. All right, so pretty solid opening hand here. It's not great, but we do have the Bronzor into the Bronzong, followed with a Copycat. How strong this hand is going to depend completely on what our opponent's playing. Steven's Advice is a good top deck. We're going to have to burn the Warp Point here. This actually isn't that bad, because we're going to force him to either retreat to get back to the Chatot, or maybe put something active he wasn't planning on. Call Energy, outstanding top deck from us. That took us from an okay hand to an outstanding hand. Top decking the Stevens and then top decking the Call Energy was just beautiful on our part. The Torterra in particular is going to be a pretty rough matchup. We don't have great damage output for those Torterras, so we're just going to have to see how this plays out here. Opponent gets a pretty slow start. That double rainbow coating was, for the coating turn 2 is very strong. I'm filling my bench here. I feel pretty confident the opponent probably does not play Dusknoir. And then that Pain Amplifier, or I'm sorry, the Cursed Alloy is going to start softening up that Claydol. Now, I am very early on in this matchup, and I think in 2008 in particular, you really need to start planning on where your prizes are going to be coming from. And there's a lot less prize rushing in this format and a lot more coming up with where your 6 prizes are going to come from. I know I'm probably going to have one on the Claydol, almost guaranteed, but I still have to find 4 additional prizes. Opponent's having a really hard time here. He is going to go for just the Call Energy. I don't actually mind just coding here, because I know that's going to up me for one more prize later on in the game. I'm going to have that Pain Amplifier. Now, yeah, my opponent could play Super Scoop Up, but if they are using Super Scoop Up on a Chatot, sitting pretty good for us. Opponent gets insanely good. He gets the Torterra and the Sceptile burned. 2 rare candies there. And this is one of those things where I almost I want to play Dusknoir in some random decks, because players just, they get it in their head what plays Dusknoir and what doesn't, and then they base their game plan completely off of that. Granted, we're doing the same thing here, but his list is a lot tighter than our list. So it's just one of those things where I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like players just don't play around Dusknoir enough. So he sends up the Torterra. We get an early Ampharos here, which is going to be great. I know that damage is going to come in handy. We are really, really going to need that extra damage from jamming. The problem is this is one of the few decks in the format that actually has decent healing for spread, because that Leaf Storm is actually going to put in a lot of work. We get the coating off. Once again, we're just getting some good chip damage in on that Claydol. That's going to fall at some point. He goes ahead, plays the Steven's Advice. We get the knockout on the Chatot, down to 4 prizes, We know the Claydol is probably going to be one at some point, so we just have to find 3 prizes here, but that's going to be easier said than done. Once again, we're putting a lot on that Ampharos. We know he's not going to be able to one-shot it. Still no Torterra X Farm. I know that's going to come at some point, but there's nothing I can do about it. I just have to keep playing the best I can here. We are going to get the knockout on that Claydol, and then we're just going to keep trying to put damage on it. That Steven's advice for, I think that was for 5 or 6, really put him in a good spot. I'm going to say, I don't know. I think it's debatable on my bench space here. Maybe I should not have benched that second Bronzong. If I remember correctly, I think we were trying to get better Cosmic Powers off, but I really do want double Ampharos in this. Okay, and this is where things get interesting. Once again, TCG1, this is a brand new set. They are still making changes with the program. They are still trying to get it all figured out. So this is essentially where the game is going to end. It was a pretty good game up until this point and shows some of the strategies of the deck. I am going to say, though, I would have taken 1 prize here. And then I think that Chatot Baltoy would have been 2 additional prizes. I would have gotten those at some point unless my opponent hit a super scoop up on it. So that's going to be the game plan I would have gone for. We probably would have just tried to ride that Pain Amplifier for 2 more prizes there. Or we would have tried to just power through Torterras with the Ampharos. I think we could have won this. I think we would have won this. I'm not sure if benching these 2 was a great idea. I know my opponent was probably in a pretty rough place with what his hand was and not having access to that Claydol. It is just unfortunate how this game ended, but that was the game plan and what we had. Yeah, it would have been tough. We would have had to get through that second Torterra. I think without the actual Claydol, if he plays the Claydol, we're guaranteed 1 more prize, which I think is going to go down to 1. And if he doesn't play the Claydol, I think that Ampharos is going to start building up bench damage as well. I think he either has to commit. I don't know if committing to both was the best. I think he would commit to. I think committing to just the Claydol is fine, and saying, "Hey, we're going to make you knock out Claydol and then a second Ampharos or a second Torterra." I don't know. It was a rough spot for the opponent. Pretty good opening from us. I'm going to say, in most formats, I say never double open because it's really weak to things like Cyclone Energy or switching attacks. And it's the same with this format, but I am going to say that holding cards can also punish you. Things like Ampharos, things like Mimic. Generally saying, I'm going to say probably benching stuff in this format is better than not benching it. Depending on if you want to lose it to Absol or not. This Baltoy I probably wouldn't want to lose to Absol, so benching it's probably stronger. But at the same time, too, if, say, this was like a second Bronzor or even a Mareep or something that I really don't mind, if that gets discarded by Baleful Wind and I want to decrease my odds of my opponent hitting a trainer, it would have been fine to hold it. There is some risk-reward there. You got to take into consideration. Opponent's playing Blissey. It's a winnable matchup, but it's probably it's a little bit rough of a matchup. Go ahead. We do play 2 Windstorm in the deck, but finding those at the right time I think is really rough. And that's one of the things, I think a lot of the decks in 2004, you'll see like 2 Windstorm, 2 Lake Boundary. But coming in and just instantly finding those Windstorm when you need them can be really rough. I think decks like Gardevoir, where you can literally power through the active, it's totally fine. Because, like, if my opponent, let's say, goes Blissey, Cessation Crystal here, as a Gardevoir player, I can go Glade, flip 4 of my prizes, knock out the Blissey. We'll say he has a hole in FF on it. It's less prizes if he doesn't. But in this situation, I'm going to have such a hard time powering through that Chansey. Or Chansey, probably Blissey on the next turn. And I'm just in such a rough spot at this point. I did go for the Chatot, but best case scenario is my opponent's going to have to knock out the Bronzong before I can get the Chatot out. We do play some supporters. We do play some options here, but this is just one of those situations where this is so weak. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get a whole lot of mileage out of that Claydol in this matchup, so I am going to go throw the double rainbow on it. I didn't want to hold it. Throwing it under the Bronzong isn't going to be great. Even baiting ER2s is better than nothing with as far as that double rainbow goes. Yeah, opponent has the hole in FF, so at this point even the Claydol is not going to be a great attacker. Yeah, we're just gonna throw the call energy under the Marie. We do get a decent mimic off whiff on the windstorm, which is unfortunate, but odds were probably not in our favor on it. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about playing wager in decks like this. It's probably not bad, but I'm not saying it's probably great either. Yeah, I mean, we've got some options. We did gamble a lot there and hell, I mean, we were copycatting for 11, so I think holding it and hoping for like the rare candy scramble or rare candy double rainbow was probably fine, but yeah, like yeah, opponent gets the R2 heads. Yeah, that cessation crystal is just gonna be a rough spot for us. We end up losing the wager. Opponent's gonna get the knockout on the clay doll. Yeah, and at this point, just a bad spot for us. We're gonna have an Ampharos, but that's not gonna be enough to fight through multiple Blissies. We really do, yeah, we really did need like I don't know. It's just cessation crystal does so much against our deck. Like we needed, we really needed to like we need that chip damage from Ampharos. We need that chip damage from Bronzong to really soften up those Blissies, and we just didn't have it. I mean I get Lake Boundary is very good in this deck, but I could also see a major argument for just playing like say 4 Windstorms in the deck as well. I think a lot of those matchups, even like um, Gardevoir, for example, you can put some. You can argue that you're going to get enough chip damage off where you don't need the actual Lake Boundary to go for knockouts, but at the same time too, I get where Lake Boundary is good, especially against decks like Empoleon. It's just legitimately though, if you don't have that actual power to power through things with Cessation Crystal, and this deck really doesn't, 2 Windstorms is rough for sure. All right, so there is actually some decent Blazekins in this format. A little bit of a rough start there. We don't really. It's a good start. We just don't really have anything we can get going with it. Opponent just Roseanne's here. All right, so I'm seeing powers left and right. I'm feeling excited about this. I don't. So the thing is, though, is I didn't really want to leave something in the active spot. I mean, I guess I probably pretty safely could have gotten for like like a Bronzor or Mareep there, and just gambled the Bronzor on the X with that fire resistance. That would have been fine. I guess my thinking was is I couldn't leave the Baltoy in the active spot, and I was looking for a different option. Chatot just seemed very strong. Yeah, and see, this is one of those things where it's going to pan out for me. You could have argued that a couple different ways. It's definitely going to pan out for me. Okay, so I'm going to say this was questionable too, because yeah, so the first questionable play was going Chat Top Bronzor instead of going like Bronzor Mareep. You can make arguments for both. We probably could have pretty safely gambled the Bronzong there and been fine. We would have been in a really bad spot if our opponent would have had an answer to it. The second questionable thing was going for the Ampharos over the Claydol. Now, I know this matchup. He's already filling his bench. I know how many powers he has. I felt like getting that initial damage down with Ampharos was probably going to be enough to win the game. Now, I am going to be upfront and say that I completely forgot about Sand Attack, and I thought I was going to Mimic for like 5 there. And then I would have a decent shot of getting the Claydol or an out to the Claydol off of that Mimic. And essentially, I just set myself back 1 turn on the Claydol. If not, I did have, if they knocked out the Chatot, I did have that Bronzong Scramble. And if they didn't knock out the Chatot, then I would be able to Mimic again, hopefully hitting it on the following turn. So that was my thought process. Obviously, this kind of fell apart very quickly and could go south very quickly because I forgot about that Sand Attack. Opponent hits the first Claydol. He goes ahead, plays the Steven's Advice, and this is where that bench damage is just going to start coming in. I'm getting pretty excited at this point. I'm seeing 5 prizes on the board like they're nothing. I actually wish he would have knocked out the combustion here, or would have been able to, but that is not how it went. Going double Bronzor here, I see that is the win condition. Should have attached that lightning energy to Amphi. Just stupid little mistakes for me. Just a stupid little mistake. Just got to slow down my pace of play here. I also think there would have been an argument there to go double Claydol, just in case he fried one there. Would have been a good argument for that. Just once again, we see that Bronzong is going to be the key to victory, and that's the route we are going. Debating between the call and the double rainbow, we do play the call down. I think we're just taking a little bit slower approach there. We do go for the copycat. The advantage with the call is if we do go behind in prizes and we don't have like us, and our only other option is like a scramble, we would have had to discard all the energy. I also see how this game is going, and I think being able to cluster bolt and discard the energy for 20 to the bench is going to be very strong too. Once again, that was also a pretty debatable play. Powers. Yeah, I don't... Our opponents just... They have a hard time playing against this deck. Bronzong is a good top deck, but at the same time, too, I don't think they're really doing a whole lot to try to play against this deck. I think they're just kind of playing into it, just trying to run us over, and I think that's a tough strategy with so many powers in play. Probably just keep the Stevens there, just so we have that draw for 6 in case something does go south. Play down the Bronzor. Alright. Yeah, just number 110. Just let that Cursed Alloy keep building up damage here. Opponent plays another supporter. We get a free prize there. I think the opponent's starting to realize how rough of a spot they're in. Going for that early Ampharos in this matchup in particular did pay off for us in the end. Opponent does take out the Claydol at this point. We get in double powers from the double knockouts from the Cursed Ally. I actually don't think this is like the worst deck in the world. Like I do think you can make Blaziken. Blaziken has some possibilities. 80 damage to anything in this format with very little healing is actually really strong. Just this was going to be a game where we had too many Cursed Alloys and the opponent just had too many powers. All right, next game. We decided to double start this time. Getting a little bit smarter about that, just in case the chat out, which our opponent has. We see a Gardevoir. Now, being up front in this game, PTCG1 is still bugged. The telepass, it won't let you telepass and play supporter in the same turn. So we are assuming our opponent is... We're going to assume they play Dusknoir till we see otherwise. Pretty solid start from the opponent here. They're going to be looking for a pretty good Mimic here. We're going to try to find a very early... if we can find an early Ampharos here, we're going to be setting all right. We do find the Claydol. Cosmic. We want to hold the Stevens just to be safe. We didn't want to risk too much for it. And then we're just going to end up holding that. Yeah. I think we're hoping to hit that candy. I'm going to say that was a pretty debatable play from us. I think I just got scared to Mimic there and lose the Stevens and the Ampharos, knowing we're probably going to get Psychic Lock. This hand isn't the worst. Worst cards. We could have drawn really bad off of that Psychic Lock and been in trouble. Yeah, I mean, you can argue that if we should have Mimicked there or not. We do see the Grimer. I think eventually we see that this is the deck from the channel that we covered. I'm going to say I think the opponent does. Yeah, I think it's a card-for-card list of what we showed on the channel. So we go ahead, we do bench the, go up to 5, feeling a little bit more confident they're not playing the Dusknoir. We go ahead, just Mimic there. We have the Ampharos, we have the Bronzong. Ironically, we are actually the aggressors right now. and our opponent is going to have to try to find answers to our setup basically at this point. We might be able to, especially after that Ampharos, we can, if our opponent doesn't put any pressure on us, we can just send up that Bronzor next turn and then evolve into Bronzong. Start just using Pain Amplifier, getting some good chip damage in. If our opponent does go aggressive, we're just going to code him for the knockout. Yeah, opponent's not going to do anything. They're just giving us more and more time, so we're just going to go ahead and play it this route. We are going to play the Scramble Energy down. This actually does put us in a spot where we do threaten to be able to coding next turn. And horrible misplay by us there. We forget to Cosmic Power. Being up front, one of the mistakes that I make is a lot of these, I'm on kind of a weird sleep schedule. A lot of these games are filmed at like 2 or 3 in the morning. When I'm probably not as awake for some of these as I should be. I'm going to say too, and something else that I remember having this conversation with Pablo a couple of years ago. But essentially he was getting into playing some online poker, and he talked about how much of a difference it made for him in like online poker tournaments when he would actually prepare. Like for a lot of these games, I'm sitting there at like 3 in the morning, like half dressed, eating a bowl of cereal, playing, TCG1. And he would talk about just how important it was for him to, we see that Muck putting in a little bit of work for our opponent, but we do get our Cosmic Power off. We don't get punished too badly for that misplay. But he talked about how important it was for him and to be successful, where he would basically treat it like he was going to go play at a casino. Like he would shower, get fully dressed, even dress up for it. Not try to multitask. He's not checking his emails, watching TV, doing all this other stuff. He is literally just focused on playing the game, or his table in his hands, and making the best plays possible. And I think there's so much strength in that. Quick bit of action there, but essentially I think we made some quick trades, and then Cursed Alloy was doing a lot of work for our opponent, forcing them to bring up the Muck. We're probably going to get the Muck knockout, and then that's going to be pretty tough for our opponent to answer that. But I think there's a lot of truth in that. I find when I'm completely focused on the game and I'm taking it seriously, like I am very like I prepared like I would go to a tournament, like, I'm all showered and dressed, and I'm not eating a bowl of cereal at the table. I wouldn't do that at a tournament. And when I take that same attitude, I notice such a big difference. And we haven't made any major misplays, but we've definitely made some really minor little misplays that we wouldn't have made in those situations. I also think that there is a big difference between playing online and playing in person. Some of these things, like literally when you're physically holding 3 cards and you physically see how small your hand is, you're never going to forget to Cosmic Power. Some things, yeah, like you can still forget to attach an energy or this or that, or make some of those debative calls. Do I bench the Bronzor? Do I hold the Bronzor in my opening hand? Stuff like that. But like that, forgetting to Cosmic, you never do that holding real cards. Or very rarely. Alright. Get that first turn call energy. Opponent has call energy. We both have Chatot. Opponent is joking around a little bit, saying how crazy it is that we both play Chatot. And 2008, where every deck plays Chatot. Alright, opponent plays Warp Point. Actually, pretty solid Warp Point from our opponent here. I'm seeing that Rare Candy Ampharos. I'm feeling really strong about that. Not feeling so hot about that Cessation Crystal. I don't know what our opponent is playing here. On Warp Point. Yeah, I think there is an argument. There's an actual argument here to get the Claydol. But I think I want that energy drop. And then I know off of a double rainbow we can actually knock out that Chatot, and we want to go aggressive. Alright, so our opponent is playing... We knew it was some sort of strategy like this. Honchkrows actually shouldn't be too bad for us as long as they don't lock us. We do have the... Yep. Steven's Advice for 4. Not a whole lot here. Probably don't want to mimic this down to 5. We're debating if we want to play the Bronzor down. Yeah, okay, so we do Mimic this down to 5. Yeah, I think we're looking for that energy. The argument to playing down the Bronzor is it's actually not the worst draw if we know our opponent's going to try to Baleful Wind us. Okay, do get the Lightning down. We copycat the 6. We do take the guaranteed energy drop. I think that's totally fine. We don't play a ton of energy in this deck, so having the guaranteed drop is very strong for us. We actually, at this point, don't even want the double rainbow because we can't knock out Absol with it. Hitting double windstorms there was so strong. Okay. That was not actually a misplay, that was a misclick. That one was a legit misclick. I don't know how the heck I did that. Once again, never a mistake you'd make with real cards, but when you're playing online at 3 a.m., you sometimes attach a call energy to a Claydol instead of taking a knockout with an Ampharos. As embarrassing as it is to make a video of that and put it on YouTube. The funny thing is while I'm watching this, I'm seeing the pictures of myself when I recorded this, and it was just me looking at the screen, like trying to figure out what happened. Opponent retreats, goes Mimic. This is once again an argument where I think we got very happy benching all those Bronzors, and in reality, we probably want to double Ampharos here. Bronzong is not going to be bad, especially if our opponent plays a supporter, then we can really start getting a little bit of leverage out of it. The ER2 flip was unfortunate, but totally fine, especially I think our opponents threw about half their ER2s. We do have the Roseannes. Goes Baleful Wind, hits the Roseannes, never mind about that one. We did do an accidental, I think, energy drop under the Chatot. I don't hate the energy drop under the Chatot, as dumb as that sounds. Just, we shouldn't have done it without making sure we didn't have the lightning energy first. Like, that's not the worst. There are certain situations in this matchup where Chatter is actually not the worst attack. We probably would want it on the Bronzong over this, but yeah, a couple of little missteps from us that are unfortunate. So we're going to copycat. The small hand's totally fine here, especially when we Cosmic out of it. That Cluster Bolt for 100 is unfortunate, being that 10 shy, but it puts our opponent in a really rough spot where they only got 4 cards in their hand and they're not allowed to play a supporter. They go ahead, get the Lightning Energy back, or the Steven's Advice back. Once again, unfortunate, but totally fine. We do see that 10 damage come down. This is going to be big for us later on in the game. Unfortunately, our opponent does see their Crystal Beach. The good news for us is it came so late in the game. We are sitting pretty good at this point. Our opponent also didn't really, thankfully, get very many good Baleful Winds off. Once again, no Cluster Bolt there. We hit the Windstorm. Feeling very good about that. The Baleful Wind is not what we want to see here. Okay, opponent just does 10. Yeah, at this point, it's just a rough spot for us. We're probably going to Windstorm that beach just so we can get it out of there. Nope, we are going to go ahead and hold it here at this point, just in case our opponent has a Station Crystal or something. I think we want to make sure we have that Windstorm just in case. Yeah, we play it all down. This point we do, that way we can retreat. I think the fear was that we would Windstorm the beach and then they'd play another one down and we wouldn't have an answer for it at that point. Which, to be honest, is pretty legitimate. Go ahead and coding here. It doesn't do a ton of damage because of that resistance, but we are going to put 20 more on it. We do have 3 pain amplifiers away from winning this game. Opponent probably will not have a way to get that Absol out of play. Yeah, opponent just says GG, hard matchup, and it for sure is a hard matchup there. All right, so that's going to go ahead, wrap up the Jay Plays Ampharos Bronzong video. I think we had some good games in here. I think we had some good matchups. To be honest with you, some very sloppy play from me on this. Definitely not games I'm super proud of. Definitely some things that I need to tighten up for sure. And to be honest with you, when I'm doing some of these Jay Plays videos, or even just playing for fun, I definitely need to be taking this a little bit more seriously than I am. And kind of tighten up on some of these misplays. But we all have goals and things we need to work on, and that's going to, I think, be mine for future videos here. So a little disappointing overall, but I do think we got some good games in there, and I think we got to show the strength of the deck. But anyways, I hope to see you in the next video.